What's up, guys? We are heading to Brazil for the UFC Rio card, headlined by Charles Oliveira versus Mateusz Gamrot. So Oliveira returning to Brazil for the first time since he fought Kevin Lee in 2020. And the UFC hasn't been to Brazil in general since Pantoja fought Urseg at UFC 301, which was on May of last year. And honestly, the card's pretty solid, especially the main. I'm mostly talking about the main card. The prelims leave much to be desired, I think, especially since Muhammad Usman pulled out of the Walter Walker fight, avoiding the leg collector. But the main card having Oliveira versus Gamrot, insane fight. Figueiredo versus Jackson, doesn't make too much sense, but it's a good fight. Luque versus Alvarez moving up to welterweight, interesting. Jhonata Diniz versus Mario Pinto, powerful and explosive. And then Ricardo Ramos versus Con Ofli. Yeah, we'll skip that one, but the last four fights are great. So on paper, I would give it like a 7 out of 10 for a fight night. And overall, I think the prospect of the card, there's not many. I would say it's Mario Pinto, who oddly enough is a heavyweight prospect. I mean, you could consider Yoel Alvarez technically because he's not ranked, but he was ranked at lightweight before moving up. So I don't consider him a prospect. The fighter of the card is obviously Charles Oliveira. He's the biggest name. He's the most prestigious fighter with the most legendary career out of all of these guys. The A side of a star-driven main event. And when do we get Oliveira fight nights these days? This is going to be a special one. The stake of the card, the fighter that's on the chopping block. There's a lot of them. Let's go through the lineup. Luan Lacerda is winless in the UFC, currently on a 2-fight loss streak. Simon Oliveira, winless in the UFC on a 3-fight loss streak. How is he still around? Carolina is on a 2-fight loss streak, not in as bad of a position as the other two. Irina Alexieva is also on a 2-fight loss streak and only has 1 total win in the UFC. Con Ofli, also winless in the UFC, currently on a 2-fight loss streak. And Ricardo Ramos, who's 1-3 in his last 4. There's a load of fighters who are questionably in the UFC still. But the banger of the card, the most explosive, fun fight, is going to be Jhonata Diniz versus Mario Pinto. 2 heavyweight knockout artists on some momentum here. Specifically, Pinto is riding some massive momentum. The sleeper of the card, the most slept on fight, I believe is the featured fight on the prelims. Jeffel Filo versus Clayton Carpenter. These two are the best fighters on the prelims, but ultimately the fight of the card is the main event, Charles Oliveira versus Mateusz Gamrot, for obvious reasons. And with that, we begin with the first fight in the bantamweight division between Luan Lacerda versus Simon Oliveira. Winner sticks around and the loser probably gets cut because, again, Lacerda's on a 2-fight loss streak, Oliveira's on a 3-fight loss streak, and they're both fighting to get their first UFC win. This is definitely a curtain opener for sure. Both guys are relatively slow, and I believe Oliveira is the better striker, whereas Lacerda is the better grappler, but Lacerda doesn't shoot that many takedowns, or at least he hasn't in the UFC often enough. He has a pretty slick rear naked choke, slides through positions pretty well, and that could be his main advantage over Oliveira. His aggression in the stand-up could also prove to be effective, but the thing is, Oliveira has okay kicks in the stand-up, he holds a solid Muay Thai stance, and all of this is vulnerable to the double leg, so Lacerda wins. Oliveira also just doesn't have great takedown defense. Tony Gravely took him down so many times. Both these guys are honestly not great. I'm going to go with Lacerda by a 3rd round submission. If he focused much of his training camp on his takedowns, I think he should win the fight. And then we go to the strawweight division. Julia Palastri versus Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Palastri is 1-2 in the UFC, exchanging the last 3 wins and losses, with her last fight losing to Lupita Godinez, so that's a pretty high-level opponent to lose to. Karolina, though, is on a 2-fight loss streak to Denise Gomez and Yasmin Lucindo. Karolina's been around for such a long time, clearly past her prime, and Palastri is somewhat of the new generation, so I'm going to go with Palastri in this fight. She is physically a lot more imposing, seems to be more powerful, but she does drop her hands a lot, and Karolina can take advantage of those moments, but Palastri's like a tank, uber aggressive, bombards with combinations, and targets the body as well. Hurt one of her opponents in the LFA once with body shots. I think she might be too physical for Karolina, especially at this state of Karolina's career. I think she overwhelms Karolina to a unanimous decision in a pretty straightforward fight. Wow, she is actually a massive favorite, minus 440. Yeah, they're not really giving Karolina much of a chance in this one, and honestly, I don't either. And then we go to Lucas Roca versus Stuart Nicole, the sleeper of the card. Your striker versus grappler matchup. Roca is extremely precise with the knee, and Stuart Nicole, focusing on takedowns and grappling, could run headfirst into one of those. And he already knows that Roca is going to be focusing on that interception, so he should be able to secure the takedown. He has solid top control, sometimes focuses on the back takes, and Roca hasn't shown the best takedown defense so far. It's decent, but I don't know if it's enough to thwart all of Stewart's attempts. He also did get submitted in his last fight against Clayton Carpenter and controlled pretty easily. If he stuffs the takedowns, I believe he knocks Stewart out. If he can't stop the takedowns, I believe Stewart is going to submit him. So I'm going with Stewart Nicole by a 3rd round submission. Lucas Roca is going to be explosive with intercepting knees, putting together some combinations, ending with a high kick, and ultimately focusing on defending the takedowns as much as possible with punishment on the openings, but I just don't think he defends them. So Stewart wins, 3rd round submission. And then we go to the women's bantamweight division. Irina Alekseeva versus Beatriz Mesquita. Alekseeva is on a 2-fight loss streak and is 1-2 in the UFC. Mesquita is undefeated in the UFC and she is a prominent grappler. She started her MMA career last year, spending most of her combat sports career in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Irina is also a grappler. She's a black belt in judo and is strangely nicknamed the Russian Ronda, even though she's not nearly as accomplished as Ronda and doesn't fight like her at all. It's very confusing. I guess just because they both come from judo, but she doesn't hold a candle to Mesquita's grappling prowess. Like, Mesquita has won multiple gold medals in world championships and Pan American championships. The accolades are not close, but does that transition to MMA? Well, so far so good for Mesquita. She is undefeated, with most of her wins coming from her grappling. Although quite short for bantamweight, she's 5'4". It makes her look a lot stockier in there, and in her LFA fights, she looks like she can compete with Kayla Harrison in bodybuilding or something. But she's a heavy top grappler with excellent submission skills. I think she's by far the better grappler of the two, but doesn't really have great reaction to getting hit. Irina's not much of a striker, but she's wild with her punches. I think it can open takedowns for Mesquita, ultimately winning the fight with her heavy top control, slowly rotating to the back, getting the rear naked choke in the 2nd round. And then we go to the heavyweight division, Vitor Petrino versus Thomas Peterson. So Petrino made his heavyweight move in his last fight, where he submitted Austin Lane in the 1st round very easily. Trivial fight for him. The Blobs, I have underestimated them before, but not when it comes to a good grappler like Vitor Petrino, man. I think he takes Peterson down in the 1st round and submits him with a rear naked choke. Peterson's very slow. He's a heavyweight, so he does have some natural power, but so does Petrino. Petrino's way faster than him, way more athletic, and just technically a far better grappler. Even though Peterson's never been taken down, I don't think the Blobs can stop Petrino's takedowns, other than maybe Shamil Gaziev. So Vitor Petrino, 1st round submission, and he's also a big favorite to go with it. Nearly every fight has been lopsided on the odds. Welcome to the Brazil cards. But not this next one. We go to the flyweight division. Jeff Alfilo versus Clayton Carpenter. This should be a competitive fight. Jeff Alfilo is coming off 1 loss to Alan Nascimento, but so far in the UFC, he is 2-2. He beat Odi Osborne and Daniel Barres, both by 1st round submission, but he also lost to Mohamed Mokaev. Rough debut to fight Mokaev, man. But Clayton Carpenter is coming off a loss to Tagir Lambakov, which was the 1st loss of his career, but overall is 2-1. He beat Lucas Roca, who we talked about earlier, and Juan Camilo Ronderos. Submitted both of those guys. Hopefully the fight goes to the ground and doesn't become a striking match. Even though they can both strike, we want to see them fight at their optimal, scrambling on the ground for submissions. I do think though if Carpenter keeps it standing, he will win the fight. He's a much more capable striker because he has the power advantage. He's incredibly explosive, and I also believe he's the better wrestler of the two, so he's essentially in control of that bridge between the stand-up and the ground, while also most likely having superior top control. Now, Jeff Alfilo can be tricky on the ground, and he has an excellent back take. He's reversed from deep half before and chains into a single leg on get-ups. And even though Carpenter might be better in the stand-up, he does get reckless at times and can get countered. Filo throws smooth combinations, mixing up his targets, and he likes to end his combos with a leg or body kick, which could be a pattern for Carpenter to counter with takedowns. But ultimately, I think that fast twitch component might be the difference maker in this, both in him shooting takedowns as well as landing some big overhand or uppercut or something. He also has a pretty good head kick too, so I'm going to go with Clayton Carpenter, just outstriking Jeff Alfilo, being in control of the wrestling, defending Filo's takedowns, and getting his own, ultimately winning the fight by a decision. But then we go to the featherweight division. Lucas Almeida versus Michael Aswell. Almeida is 2-3 in the UFC, coming off a split decision loss to Danny Silva, whereas Michael Aswell has only lost his UFC debut to Bilal Oki by a decision. So both guys are strikers. Almeida has some submissions, but prefers to keep it standing. He's pretty tall at 5'11" with a 71-inch reach. Although sometimes doesn't use it the most efficiently, he will get into scraps and trade punches. He might have more punching power, but might have a flimsier chin. He got dropped and finished by Andre Fili. Whereas Michael Aswell is pretty durable, he's never been knocked out, and has taken some big shots, especially from someone like Bilal Oki, who's powerful, so Michael Aswell might be able to hurt Almeida in some of those exchanges, but even though his distance management can be somewhat inefficient, I still think it is an advantage for him to be able to land his punches from further away. And I also think he's just technically the better striker of the two. We will see. He is the underdog, but I'm picking the underdog, Lucas Almeida, by a decision, winning 2 rounds out of the 3 in a close fight. Then we go to Ricardo Ramos versus Con Ofli. Not the greatest fight. Ramos is 1-3 in his last 4 fights, only beating Joshua Colibao by a split decision, and many believe that he should have lost that one as well. And Con Ofli is 0-2 in his last 2, winless in the UFC, but he came off the Ultimate Fighter, winning 2 fights over there at least. But Ofli did not have an easy start in the UFC. He began against Byron Santos, got knocked out in the 2nd round, and then fought Muhammad Naimov. Both of those guys are pretty good. But I got Ramos winning the fight by another legendary spinning elbow. He is the elbow king. He unironically has one of the best spinning elbows I've ever seen, even though he's not like an amazing fighter overall. I think Con Ofli might be steadily winning the fight and just gets KO'd with an elbow or something. Ramos is offensively potent. He's the taller and longer guy. The 6-inch reach advantage I think should be significant, establishing his reach if he utilizes the jab better than ever, hopefully. But I think the kicks are going to be more of the focus here. Blasting kicks to the body and legs, as Ofli sometimes likes to bounce in and out. Some linear movements could be disrupted by those kicks. And although Ofli is really good on the ground, I think Ramos is solid enough to hold his own. Now where the fight gets rough for Ramos is in the 3rd round. I think Ofli has a much better gas tank. I can see Ramos slowing down, especially if Ofli applies enough pressure throughout the fight. He could win this. So Ricardo Ramos is a -198 favorite. And I absolutely don't agree with this. Even though I'm picking him to win, this could be a close fight, especially because of the cardio issue. I'm still going to go with Ramos by 2nd round TKO, spinning elbow, but I would not be surprised if Con Ofli wins this. And then we go to the heavyweight division, the banger of the card, Jhonata Diniz versus Mario Pinto. Both of these guys brutalized Austin Lane, dude. They're about to show Austin Lane knockout highlights in promotion of this fight. But Jhonata Diniz is only coming off 1 win, a decision against Elvin Hines, but before that lost to Marcin Tybura. Mario Pinto only has had his UFC debut, a 2nd round knockout against Austin Lane, one-shotting him. But this fight might go slightly differently because Jhonata Diniz has some pretty abysmal takedown defense. And Mario Pinto has 1 fight on the ground, possibly could take the fight there and dominate on top. I mean, Austin Lane literally held this guy down for the entire 1st round and even got full mount. Marcin Tybura dominated him on the ground. At the same time, though, I think if he could defend the takedowns and Pinto's wrestling is just not strong enough at this level, Diniz has a patient striking game that could counter some of Pinto's wild looping punches. But regardless, I'm going with Mario Pinto by a 2nd round knockout. I think he's faster, he has the reach advantage, he's pretty good at putting together combos, and he tends to move his head off the center line pretty well, so I could see some of Diniz's shots missing, causing some openings for Pinto to blast through for a knockout. So I'm going with Mario Pinto, 2nd round knockout. And then we go to the welterweight division, Vicente Luque versus the short notice Yoel Alvarez, who was originally supposed to be Santiago Ponzinibbio. Dude, they gave Luque a monster. He is going to get obliterated beyond belief, and he is now a sacrificial lamb for Yoel Alvarez, who honestly I think can make a decent run at welterweight. But regarding the fight, man, this is a tough fight for Vicente Luque. What are the odds, bro? Alvarez is a -500 favorite, and reasonably as well. This is a horrible fight for Luque. Luque's just not the same guy. I had hope after the Gorimbo fight, but it was too foolish though, man. He got destroyed by Kevin Holland. I was hoping that Luque had a resurgence there, man. And Yoel Alvarez seemingly is hitting his prime. And not only hitting his prime, but I think we're going to see the most optimal version of Yoel Alvarez, possibly even making a top 10 run due to finally being in his weight class. Crazy enough, he spent so much of his career at lightweight. At 6'3" with a 77-inch reach, and he's not that slim either. And to test this experiment, they're going to throw Luque in there to see how this performs. Alvarez is going to beat him literally everywhere. There's nowhere that Luque can compete, except potentially a puncher's chance. I mean, he still punches hard, but Alvarez is bigger, longer, more technical in the stand-up, more lethal on the ground. He's more athletic, he's faster. If he just sits behind the jab and let that open up all of his power shots, he should win this fight pretty handily. So I'm going to go with Yoel Alvarez by a 2nd round TKO. I think he drops Luque and finishes him on the ground with ground and pound. Man, it's so unfortunate that he's fighting Yoel Alvarez because he should not be fighting someone like this. But Ponzinibbio pulled out, so a replacement was necessary, and and he has to fight El Fenomeno. I honestly think Alvarez can make a run at welterweight. I believe we're going to see the best from Alvarez. And then we go to the co-main event, Deiveson Figueiredo versus Montel Jackson. This is such a strange fight because Deiveson has only been fighting the very best. He's coming off a 2-fight loss streak to Corey Sandhagen and Peter Yan. Before that, beat Chito Vera, Cody Garbrandt, and Rob Font. But Montel Jackson is coming off a 6-fight win streak against Daniel Marcos, Damon Blackshear, Hani Yahya, Julio Arce, JP Buys, and Jesse Strader. Now, there's a great distinction in their level of opposition. Davison's mostly just been fighting the best, and Jackson has yet to fight someone ranked until now. And oddly enough, Montel Jackson is a 3-1 favorite. I guess there's some logic there due to Figgy's knee getting torn apart like 5 months ago. But I think stylistically, this is a very tough fight for Jackson. Figgy is as powerful as any of them. He is the only fighter to ever drop Chito. And usually he's a high-level grappler. I don't know why he was fighting Corey the way he was. So perhaps there's some fight IQ deficiency. But for a guy who was champion and defended his belt and had this rivalry with Brandon Moreno and defeated Pantoja, you would think his fight IQ would be higher than that. But attacking Corey's knee was very questionable. And if he does that against Jackson, he's going to get knocked out for it. Jackson's powerful, man. He one-shotted Damon Blackshear and immediately in the fight. But he has like a choppy or disjointed style. There's no fluidity in anything he does. You could tell the guy's strong and powerful just by the way he moves. I mean, he's literally like a statue. And not in the deficient way that Patchy Mix is. Jackson's choppiness makes his striking difficult to read because he's usually attacking in bursts. Montel Jackson is at least technical in the stand-up and can sprawl on takedowns, but in his last fight against Daniel Marcos, he got taken down multiple times and held down for minutes of the fight. And not to use MMA math, but if Deiveson focuses on the single legs, I think he should be able to get the fight to the ground and dominate on top. As long as he doesn't roll for knees and trade punches, I think he should do very well. I just don't like this X factor thing about a potential knee injury. And now he did have an open workout and he was moving very well. He even did a successful handspring, so I think he's probably all right. And if he is, I think he defeats Montel Jackson by taking him to the ground and submitting him in the 3rd round. He's powerful enough. If his knees are all right, he can outstrike him as well. He just can't trade punches. I think Jackson's bigger. He has one-punch knockout power. He's very willing to exchange, but if Deiveson can pick his shots and use his footwork to evade and then counter, potentially going 1st and 3rd in the exchanges, I think he gets the win. Drops him, submits him. Hopefully he's not injured, man. And then we finally go to the main event. Charles Oliveira versus a short notice Mateusz Gamrot. And firstly, all praise to Mateusz Gamrot for taking this fight on short notice. He stepped up, he's been wanting to fight everybody, and he's getting this big opportunity. If he wins, he'll be very close to a title shot. So much praise to both of these guys, and may the best man win. Now to the fight. 2 lightweight veterans. Charles Oliveira is one of the greatest lightweights of all time. 2 prominent grapplers. I believe Oliveira is more well-rounded, whereas Gamrot most likely has the better pure wrestling skills, but can he handle that firepower? And can he evade the submissions, both in the stand-up and on the ground? As he shoots takedowns, his neck can be presented, and Oliveira will dive on that just like he did against Arman, and he won the 1st round off of it. And there is an element of MMA math going into this fight. Charles Oliveira narrowly lost to Arman Tsarukyan. Mateusz Gamrot narrowly defeated Arman Tsarukyan. But there is a reverse order as well. Oliveira knocked out Beneil Dariush in the 1st round. Beneil Dariush thoroughly beat Mateusz Gamrot. We got 2 different MMA math equations in reverse here. MMA math has been dispelled. It is not going to affect this fight. And here's an interesting stat, even though it's completely wrong. According to the official stats, Charles Oliveira and Mateusz Gamrot have been dropped equally throughout their lightweight careers. They've each been knocked down 5 times at lightweight. Now, the reason why that's incorrect is because Michael Chandler scored 0 knockdowns in both fights against Oliveira. And Justin Gaethje was only credited with 1, although you can argue that Oliveira pulled guard, fell to his back from getting hit, but it was after he ate a big shot, though. That is quite interesting. Yeah, Gamrot got knocked down by RDA, Jalen Turner, Beneil Dariush, Arman Tsarukyan, and Gurum Kutladze. And wait, hold on, Dan Hooker wasn't even credited with his knockdown. Bro, he clearly knocked him down in the 1st round with that left hook. What is with the UFC stats? Like, knockdowns are the easiest to score, so if they're inaccurate with their knockdowns, how do we even know that these total significant strike counts are accurate? I mean, they even get heights wrong, so it's not surprising. I think this is honestly a tough fight for Gamrot. He's not much of a striker. He got dropped by Dan Hooker in his last fight off of a hook. And Oliveira is going to bring that pressure, constantly cutting off the cage to precisely line up his striking. I think stylistically this is a horrible fight for Gamrot, but there is an additional factor that can give Gamrot a striking chance. Oliveira got flatlined a few months ago. Due to Oliveira's weakened chin, those punches might feel like he has some power. But Gamrot will switch stances constantly, and depending if it's open or closed, Charles could blast kicks to the body, attack with leg kicks, line up the right straight on the open stance, and cut off Gamrot's lateral movement with those hooks just like Dan Hooker did. So I really think Oliveira is just way too potent in the stand-up. Potentially Gamrot's going to land some intercepting shots. If Oliveira is not defensive enough, he could get hurt by some of them. We do have to remember that he sort of hurt Dan Hooker with a flash knockdown or something. It was a very strange collision, but he threw like a double punch as Hooker advanced forward, causing Hooker to take a knee. And that jab is one of Gamrot's best attacks. It's pretty fast. He doesn't telegraph much with it. But I don't think Oliveira is going to be running into close range for that to land, unless he tries to clinch up. But he's pretty good at keeping distance, especially when he's the one dictating the pace. And because Gamrot is usually on the back foot in his fights, he's just willing to move around. I think it will put Gamrot in the disadvantage. His punches might fall short, and his takedowns might be too obvious on the back foot. I think if Oliveira replicates his striking approach from the Chandler rematch, I think he could dominate the stand-up and force these desperate shots out of Gamrot. Ultimately, I think Gamrot's focus is shooting takedowns and controlling Oliveira for as long as possible, but that is extremely difficult. Even Arman Tsarukyan nearly lost a 3-round fight trying to do that, and we've seen Oliveira go 5 rounds against Chandler at a pretty hectic pace, but not in this one. I'm going with Charles Oliveira finishing Gamrot within 3 rounds. Oliveira's too powerful in the stand-up. He's a better technical striker. His pressure can make the takedowns a lot more obvious to defend. He has good takedown defense, but he's also a lethal submission threat. While fighting in Brazil with the entire audience chanting his name, this could be an overwhelming experience for Mateusz Gamrot. He is fighting one of the biggest Brazilian stars of all time in his territory. But if Gamrot happens to win, there's going to be a lot of angry Brazilians in the crowd, and I don't even know what would be worse for him. Losing to Oliveira or winning and facing the crowd. No, but Oliveira has to be focused. So I'm going Charles Oliveira by a 3rd round submission, dropping Gamrot and then getting him to tap from a choke. Wait, Oliveira's also an underdog? Gamrot's a -130 favorite. It's almost a pick'em, but that is surprising. Gamrot is very motivated for this fight, obviously. You know, if he beats Oliveira, he's going to be 1 fight away from a title shot, as Dana has promised that the winner of Arman and Hooker is the #1 contender. So Gamrot beats Oliveira, let's say he fights Max Holloway or Paddy Pimblett after. That would be the next title eliminator bout. I can't wait, man. It's a great fight. I like both guys, but man, we can't have Oliveira lose a 2nd fight in a row. And fighting in Brazil is too special of an event for him. And you could sports bet on DraftKings, thankfully sponsoring this video, covering all the UFC fights and providing the absolute best betting lines. Plenty of sports to pick from, not just MMA, but from all the UFC pay-per-view cards to the fight nights to even Dana White's Contender Series, DraftKings has it all. There's title fights coming up with high stakes. With plenty of research, you could capitalize on those odds using that MMA knowledge. But if you want to disregard the straight bets, you can group up a parlay if you're confident enough to multiply your earnings. They also have a ton of props and methods for your picks as well, such as knockouts, submissions, decisions, draws. If the fight ends in the 4th round specifically, those tend to have some of the most extraordinary odds, and so many more. It would take an hour to go through all the different methods and how you could bet on these fights, just endless strategies, and it's all awaiting you on DraftKings. So for anybody who's interested in sports betting, DraftKings is absolutely the place to go. Go to DraftKings.com and use the promo code TheWeasel when you sign up, as they're giving you a generous offer for all new customers, turning their $5 into $200 if your bet wins. Paid instantly in bonus bets. The crown is yours, and the offer requires a minimum of -500 on the odds. Remember, go to DraftKings.com and use the promo code TheWeasel. Remember to bet responsibly. Okay, so Mateusz Gamrot is a -118 against the -102 Oliveira. That's interesting, but I don't agree with that at all. I think Oliveira should be the favorite. Deiveson Figueiredo is a +260 underdog against the -325 favorite Montel Jackson. The only way I agree with that is if Figueiredo is still injured. Vicente Luque is a +410 underdog against the -550 Yoel Alvarez. I absolutely agree with that. Jhonata Diniz is a -135 favorite against the +114 underdog Mario Pinto. Pinto's an underdog? Okay, that's interesting. Ricardo Ramos is the -198 favorite against the +164 Con Ofli. I agree with that. Lucas Almeida is the +124 underdog against the -148 favorite Michael Aswell. I'm going with the underdog. Jeff Ofilo is a +102 underdog against the -122 favorite Clayton Carpenter. I agree with that. Vitor Petrino is the minus 298 favorite against the plus 240 Thomas Peterson. I agree with that as well. Beatriz Mesquita is the minus 575 favorite against the plus 425 Irina Alexieva. I agree with that as well. Lucas Roca is the minus 118 favorite against the minus 102 underdog Stuart Nicole. Yeah, sure, it's a pick'em. Very close fight. I agree with that. Julia Polastri is the minus 535 favorite against the plus 400 underdog Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I don't think she's that big of a favorite, but sure, she should be like, I think a minus 300 or something. And then Luan Lacerda is the minus 258 favorite against a plus 210 underdog Simon Oliveira. I do agree with most of them, but there are a few fights that I completely disagree with. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did, make sure to give it a like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, leave in the comments below what are your picks, who do you think is going to win the fight, and what is the best fight on the card for you outside of the main event. And I'll see you guys in the next video.